The darkness of space tore apart like fabric as 10,000 warships emerged from hyperspace. They appeared at the edge of a small solar system, their massive hulls blocking out the stars behind them. The fleet stretched for millions of kilometers, a wall of metal and weapons that had conquered 47 species across 3,000 years of galactic history. On the command deck of the flagship Eternal Dominion fleet, Commander Jardo stood before the main viewing screen. His scales gleamed under the red combat lighting as he studied the primitive system before him. This was the human home world, a backwater planet called Earth. His four eyes scanned the tactical display with satisfaction. The humans had only been in space for 200 years. They had a few dozen colonies scattered across nearby systems. They were nothing compared to the might of the Vraxian Empire. All ships report ready status. His second officer announced from her station. The invasion fleet is prepared to advance on your command. Jarduk nodded slowly. This would be quick. The humans would see his Armada and surrender within hours. They always did. Every species understood the futility of fighting the Vraxian conquest fleet. Those who surrendered were allowed to keep their lives, though they would serve the Empire as workers and soldiers. Those who resisted were eliminated. It was simple. It was efficient. It had worked for 3 millennia. Begin standard approach. Jarduk commanded. Prepare the surrender. Demand. We advance to their home world. The fleet began moving forward. Engines burning bright against the cosmic darkness. They passed the outer edges of the system, moving past the orbit of a gas giant the humans called Neptune. Sensors swept the system constantly, cataloging defenses and military assets. The humans had some orbital platforms around their home world. They had a few hundred warships scattered throughout the system, nothing that could threaten his fleet. Then something appeared on the sensors. A single ship, small and sleek, was approaching from the direction of another gas giant called Jupiter. It was transmitting a wideband signal requesting communication. Jardo's officers looked at each other with amusement. One ship against 10,000. Put them on screen, Jardo ordered, curious to see what the humans would say. The view screen flickered and showed the bridge of the human vessel. Woman in a dark blue uniform stood at the center. Her brown hair was pulled back tightly, and her dark eyes held no fear. Behind her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. The name of the ship was visible on the transmission header. UNC Olive Branch. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Nations Space Command, the woman said calmly. You have entered our solar system with hostile intent. I am authorized to deliver an official warning from the government of Earth and all human colonies. Jarduk felt his mandibles click together in what his species used as laughter. Warning from them. You have 72 hours to reverse course and leave our space. Captain Vasquez continued. Her voice remained steady. Professional. We do not wish to fight you. We do not want war. But we will not allow you to threaten our home. Turn back now. This is your only warning. The transmission included a data package. Jarduk's tactical officer opened it, and holographic displays filled the air around the command deck. Images of human history appeared. Battles, wars, weapons. The humans had spent most of their existence fighting each other. Their wars had killed millions, sometimes hundreds of Millions, their weapons had grown from simple explosives to nuclear weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. Commander, his tactical officer, said quietly, "These casualty statistics are concerning. The humans have extensive experience with total warfare. Their weapons development shows remarkable innovation under pressure." "Perhaps we should." "Enough, Jar interrupted. "These are primitive conflicts, wars fought with chemical rockets and fusion bombs. We have plasma weapons that can crack planets. We have shields that can withstand starla radiation. This changes nothing." He turned his attention back to the screen. Captain Vasquez was still waiting for a response. "Human," Jardok said slowly, "you speak of warnings as if you have the power to threaten us. We are the Vraxian Empire. We have conquered 47 species. Your entire fleet could not destroy even 1% of our armada. You will surrender or you will be destroyed. There is no other option." Captain Vasquez's expression didn't change. She simply nodded once. "Then you've made your choice. You have 72 hours. I strongly suggest you use that time to leave. What happens after that will be your responsibility, not ours." The transmission ended. The human ship turned and began accelerating away, back toward the inner system. Jar watched it go, then dismissed it from his thoughts. One ship, one warning. It meant nothing. "Continue the advance," he ordered. "All ships maintain formation. We will reach their home world in 70 hours." The fleet moved forward, but as they traveled deeper into the system, the sensors began detecting anomalies. There were strange energy signatures scattered throughout the solar system. Thousands of them. The tactical officer flagged them for analysis. Most appeared to be automated defense platforms. Some were built into asteroids. Others were hidden in the debris fields near the outer planets. There were weapons mounted on moons, orbital fortresses around the colonies, and massive structures that appeared to be some kind of mass drivers. They have more defenses than expected, the tactical officer reported. "But Commander, our fleet still outnumbers their military assets 100 to 1. These platforms cannot stop us." Jardo studied the tactical display. The human defenses were impressive for such a young species, but they were still insufficient. His shields could withstand their weapons. His fleet could overwhelm their platforms. Victory was certain. "Maintain course," he commanded. "All ships prepare for combat operations. The humans have chosen extinction." Behind him, officers began coordinating the fleet's approach. Weapon systems charged, shields powered to full strength. Fighter squadrons prepared for launch. The Vraxian conquest fleet had begun its final approach to Earth, and nothing could stop them. At least that's what Jardo believed. The clock had started counting down. 72 hours until the humans showed him exactly how wrong he was. On Earth, deep beneath the Swiss Alps, Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of United Nations Defense Headquarters. Around her, thousands of officers and technicians worked at stations that controlled humanity's entire military network. Holographic displays showed the Varaxian fleet position, updated in real time by sensor networks scattered throughout the solar system. The enemy Armada was crossing Neptune's orbit, moving steadily toward the inner system. Captain Vasquez delivered the warning as ordered. Her aide reported. The Vraxian commander rejected it. They're continuing their advance, Admiral Chen nodded slowly. She had expected nothing different. The Vraxians had conquered dozens of species. They had no reason to fear humanity. They saw Earth's defenses and counted ships, calculating that their superior numbers guaranteed victory. They thought like every other military power in the galaxy. They were about to learn that humans thought differently. Issue the order, Chen said. Quietly, all defense networks to standby. Status, begin the countdown protocol. Damocles authorization code, November. Echo Victor, Echo Romeo Alpha Golf Alpha. India, November. The word spread through the command center like lightning. Officers repeated the code at their stations across the solar system. Systems that had been dormant began waking up. Weapons platforms that had orbited in silence for decades received their activation sequences. Hidden bases on moons and asteroids started charging their power cores. Millions of automated drones initialized their combat programming. Admiral Chen walked to a observation window that looked down into the main operations floor. She remembered the day that had led to all of this. 150 years ago, humanity had sent a research station to explore a newly discovered alien structure. The station had 300 scientists and their families. First contact with an alien species should have been humanity's greatest achievement. Instead, the aliens had destroyed the station without warning. Every person aboard had died, men, women, children, gone in minutes. The aliens had viewed humans as primitive vermin, unworthy of communication. They had sent a message afterward telling humanity to stay in their own system or face extinction. That message had changed humanity forever. The United Nations had unified under a single purpose: ensure that could never happen again. Every resource, every mind, every piece of technology had been dedicated to one goal: survival. Not just survival, but the guarantee that no one could ever threaten Earth again. The humans had studied every conflict in their history. They had analyzed what made humans different from other species. The answer was simple and terrifying. Humans were persistent predators. When threatened, humans didn't fight until they won. They fought until the threat could never return. Admiral Chen's communication panel lit up. Multiple signals from the Galactic Council. She answered the first one. An alien appeared on screen, its crystalline form glittering with anxiety. Admiral Chen, this is Counselor Varric of the Harmony Collective. Please, you must convince the Vraxians to withdraw. You don't understand what will happen if... Counselor Chen interrupted gently. We gave them 72 hours. We told them to leave. They refused. What happens next is their choice, not ours. But you don't understand. Vari's voice took on a desperate tone. The Council has studied human warfare. We know what your species does when threatened. The Vraxians don't understand. They think you're like other species they've conquered. Please call them back. Stop this before Chen ended the communication. 3 more calls came in immediately, all from different Council species, all saying the same thing, warning the Vraxians to leave, begging humanity to show restraint. She ignored them all. The Vraxians had been warned. They had 72 hours to make the right choice. Hours passed. The Vraxian fleet continued forward. At hour 48 they crossed Mars orbit. That's when the first human ships engaged them. Small, fast vessels that appeared from the asteroid belt. They didn't try to fight the Vraxian warships. They fought. Until the threat could never return. Admiral Chen, this is Counselor Varric of the Harmony Collective. Please, you must convince the Vraxians to withdraw. You don't understand. What will happen if... Counselor Chen interrupted gently. We gave them 72 hours. We told them to leave. They refused. Until the threat could never return. Admiral Chen, this is Counselor Varric of the Harmony Collective. Please, you must convince the Vraxians to withdraw. You don't understand. What will happen if... Counselor Chen interrupted gently. We gave them 72 hours. We told them to leave. They refused. Until the threat could never return. Admiral Chen, this is Counselor Varric of the Harmony Collective. Please, you must convince the Vraxians to withdraw. You don't understand. What will happen if... Counselor Chen interrupted gently. We gave them 72 hours. We told them to leave. directly. Instead, they targeted support. Vessels, supply ships, communication. Relays, then they vanished before the Vraxians could respond. Jardo watched from his flagship as his fleet took minor casualties, a few dozen ships destroyed. It was nothing compared to his total strength, but the tactics annoyed him. The humans refused to face him in open battle. They struck and fled. Like cowards, Commander, his tactical officer said nervously, I've been analyzing the human attack patterns. They're not trying to destroy our fleet. They're isolating sections of it, disrupting our communication networks. If they continue this strategy, let them try, Zardo growled. They're delaying the inevitable. When we reach their home world, they will have no choice but to face us. But the tactical officers' concern grew as more reports came in. The humans were precise, too precise. Every target they hit served a specific purpose. Communication ships went dark. Logistics vessels carrying fuel and ammunition were destroyed. Sensor platforms that coordinated fleet movements were picked off one by one. The Vraxian Armada was slowly being divided into isolated groups that couldn't effectively communicate with each other. Hour 70 approached. The Vraxian fleet was now past Mars, approaching Earth's orbit. Jart could see the blue planet on his view screen. It looked so peaceful, so vulnerable. His fleet would be in position to begin orbital bombardment within 2 hours. At hour 72 exactly, Captain Vasquez's face appeared on every screen in the Vraxian flagship. Her expression was sad, almost regretful. Commander Jardok, she said quietly, 72 hours have passed. You were warned. You were given every opportunity to leave in peace. What happens next is not our choice, it's yours. You chose this. Remember that. The transmission ended for a moment. Nothing happened. The Vraxian fleet continued its approach. Officers looked at each other, confused. Was that it? Just another empty threat? Then every alarm in the flagship began screaming at once. The tactical displays lit up with thousands of new contacts. No, not thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. The entire solar system had just come alive with weapon signatures. Jardok stared at the displays in disbelief. This wasn't possible. Where had they all come from? Deep in the command center beneath the Swiss Alps, Admiral Chen spoke 3 words into her command microphone. 3 words that humanity had prepared for 150 years to say. Release the swarm. In orbit around Earth, on the Moon, on Mars, on every asteroid and station and hidden platform throughout the solar system. Hatches opened and hell itself came pouring out. The Vraxian fleet had entered what humanity called the kill zone. For 12 seconds nothing seemed to happen. Then the sensors detected movement. Objects that had been classified as asteroids throughout the solar system were accelerating, not with chemical rockets or fusion drives. They were moving at impossible speeds. Contacts accelerating to 0.5 light speed. The tactical officer screamed. Impact in 10 seconds. 98. Jardok barely had time to process the information before the first impacts occurred. The objects weren't asteroids. They were relativistic kill vehicles. Massive chunks of metal that had been accelerated over months to nearly the speed of light. When they hit Vraxian ships, the results were catastrophic. Vraxian battle cruiser disappeared in a flash of light so bright it temporarily blinded the sensors. The kinetic energy of the impact converted matter to plasma shields meant nothing, armor meant nothing at those speeds. Mass became an unstoppable weapon. Another ship exploded, then another, then 10 more, 100, 1,000, in less than 30 seconds. 3,000 Braxian warships ceased to exist. They weren't damaged, they weren't disabled, they were simply gone, converted to expanding clouds of superheated gas and debris. 10% of the invasion fleet had been eliminated before they could fire a single shot. Evasive maneuvers, Jarek roared. All ships scatter, random vector changes. But it was too late. The relativistic weapons had been launched months ago. Their trajectories calculated to intersect with predicted fleet positions. The humans had known exactly where the Vraxians would be. They had prepared the perfect ambush. Surviving ships began breaking formation, trying to avoid the incoming projectiles. That's when the second wave hit, from Earth's moon, from orbital stations, from hidden platforms. Throughout the inner system, millions of objects launched into space. They were small, each only the size of a basketball, but there were so many of them. What are those? An officer asked, watching the tactical display fill with red contacts. Autonomous combat drones, the tactical officer said, his voice hollow with shock. Millions of them. They're swarming toward our fleet. Drones moved like a living thing, a massive cloud of metal and explosives. They accelerated toward the Vraxian ships at tremendous speeds. Point. Defense systems opened fire, destroying hundreds of drones, but for everyone destroyed, 1,000 more kept coming. The Rixrayan weapons couldn't target them all. The first drones reached a Vraxian destroyer. They latched onto the hull and detonated individually. Each explosion was small, but thousands of drones hit the ship within seconds. The shape charges burned through armor. They destroyed sensor arrays. They punched holes in the engine core. The destroyer's power failed and it went dark, drifting helplessly. This happened to ship after ship. The drones were programmed with tactical artificial intelligence. They coordinated their attacks, focusing on vulnerable points. They targeted engines first, stopping ships from fleeing, then weapons systems, then life support. The Vraxian fleet was being torn apart by an enemy they couldn't effectively fight. Jark watched his armada die around him. 7,000 ships remained scattered across millions of kilometers of space. His communications network was destroyed. He couldn't coordinate with his other commanders. Each ship was fighting alone, drowning in drones. Transmission forced its way through his damaged systems. Admiral Chen's face appeared on his screen. The human woman looked tired but determined. You were warned, she said simply. Humanity doesn't build weapons for honor. We don't fight for glory or conquest. We build weapons to survive. And Commander, we over-engineer everything. Behind her, Jark could see the human command center. Hundreds of personnel working calmly at their stations. This wasn't chaos for them. This was exactly what they had planned. Your fleet entered our system like you owned it, Chen continued. You thought your numbers made you invincible, but you made a mistake. You didn't ask why a species with only 200 years in space would warn you away. Instead of running, you didn't wonder why we gave you 72 hours to leave. Instead of attacking immediately, Jar's mandibles clicked in rage and fear. You used your home world as bait. You wanted us to come here we wanted you to leave. Chen corrected, but if you chose to attack, yes, we wanted you right where you are, in our kill zone, surrounded by weapons you can't see and can't fight. Every defense in this system has been built over 150 years, every scenario planned, every tactic tested. You're not fighting a military commander, you're fighting an entire species that decided extinction was not an option. Jardock tried to respond, but another alarm blared. New contacts were appearing on the sensors, massive energy signatures from the outer system, from Neptune, from Uranus. Directed energy weapons were powering up, weapons that had been hidden on the outer planets, disguised as research stations and mining operations. All ships retreat, Jardock commanded. Full reverse, get us out of this system. But the human ships were already moving to cut off their escape routes. Smaller, faster vessels positioned themselves between the Vraxians and open space. They didn't need to win fights, they just needed to delay the Vraxian ships for a few more minutes. The directed energy weapons fired beams of concentrated energy, crossed millions of kilometers in seconds. They were powerful enough to burn through shields and armor like paper. The beams didn't target individual ships, they swept through space, cutting through multiple vessels. At once, a Vraxian carrier broke apart. As a beam sliced it in half, the two pieces tumbled away, life support failing, crew dying in the vacuum. Another beam caught 3 destroyers in formation, punching through all 3 before the energy dissipated. The outer planet weapons created a crossfire that the Vraxian fleet couldn't escape. Jardock realized with horror that the humans had positioned weapons throughout their entire solar system. This wasn't a defense, it was a trap, a massive system-wide killbox designed to eliminate any fleet that came close to Earth. How long had they been building this? How much of their resources had they dedicated to preparing for invasion? His flagship shuddered as drones slammed into the hull. Explosions rocked the ship, power fluctuated, the shields were failing. Around him, officers worked frantically to keep systems online, but it was hopeless. The human attack was overwhelming. 4,000 ships remained from his fleet of 10,000, 4,000 ships trying desperately to escape a solar system that had become a death trap. The drones kept coming, the energy weapons kept firing, and worst of all, the human warships were now moving in, coordinating their attacks to prevent any Vraxian vessels from reaching escape velocity. Jardock slumped in his command chair. The greatest invasion fleet in Vraxian history was being destroyed, not in glorious battle, not in a fair fight between warriors. They were being systematically eliminated by an enemy that had spent generations preparing for this exact moment. The humans had been ready, they had always been ready, and Zardock had ignored their warning. The battle, if it could even be called that, continued for 36 hours. The human forces didn't rush, they didn't take unnecessary risks, they methodically eliminated the Vraxian fleet ship by ship, section by section. Every time a group of Vraxian vessels tried to form a defensive formation, the humans targeted them with coordinated strikes. Every attempt to break through the blockade and escape to open space was countered. Jardock watched it all from his damaged flagship. His ship was crippled but not destroyed. The humans had deliberately disabled it early. The fight, taking out its engines and weapons but leaving life support Intact, they wanted him alive. They wanted him to watch. By the end of the 36 hours, less than 400 ships remained. From the original 10,000, most were heavily damaged, drifting without power. The human ships moved through the debris field, securing the disabled vessels and rescuing survivors. No executions, no torture. The humans simply took the defeated Vraxians into custody with professional efficiency. A human boarding shuttle attached to the Eternal Dominion. Marines in powered armor entered the ship, moving through the corridors with their weapons ready. They encountered no resistance. The Vraxian crew was too shocked, too defeated to fight. They had been the hunters. Now they were prey, and they didn't know how to process it. The Marines reached the command deck. Their leader, a tall woman with cold eyes, gestured for Jardock to stand. He did, his legs shaking with exhaustion and fear. The humans secured him with restraints and led him through his own ship. He saw his crew watching with hollow eyes. They had been the elite of the Vraxian military. Now they were prisoners of a species they had dismissed as primitive. The shuttle took him to a human command carrier, the UNC Indomitable. He was brought to a conference room. The restraints were removed and he was told to sit. He waited for hours alone with his thoughts and his shame. Finally, the door opened. Admiral Chen entered wearing her dress uniform. She carried a data pad and a small holographic projector. She sat across from him, studying him with those dark human eyes. Commander Jardock, she said quietly, do you know why you're still alive? He didn't answer. His translator implant rendered her words in his language, but he couldn't find words to respond. You're alive because we want you to deliver a message, Chen continued. She activated the holographic projector. Images appeared between them. Ships dying, the Vraxian fleet being torn apart. This recording will be given to you. You will take it back to your empire. You will show them what happened. Here she changed the image. Now it showed something different, a space station, human design. Jardock recognized it from the intelligence briefing. This was the research station that had been destroyed 150 years ago. This is why we were ready for you, Chen said. Her voice remained calm, but Jardock could hear the pain underneath. 150 years ago, we sent scientists to explore an alien structure. 300 people. Researchers, engineers, their families. Children. She paused. First contact with another species. It should have been the greatest day in human history. Hologram showed the station exploding. Instead, an alien species destroyed them. Without warning, no communication, no negotiation, just destruction. They sent us a message afterward telling us to stay in our system or be exterminated. She looked directly at Jark. That message changed humanity forever. We realized the universe was more dangerous than we had imagined. We realized that our survival wasn't guaranteed, so we made a choice. We dedicated everything to ensuring that could never happen. Again, more images appeared. Human shipyards working constantly, weapons being manufactured, defense platforms being constructed. For 150 years, every human government has worked toward one goal: make Earth and all human colonies impossible to threaten. We didn't want to conquer anyone. We didn't want an empire. We just wanted to be left alone. She deactivated the projector and leaned forward. You could have been our friends, Commander. Humanity doesn't hate other species, we were excited too. Join the galactic community, but you came here with warships, you ignored our warning, you chose to threaten our home. We didn't know, Sharto said finally. His voice barely a whisper, we thought. You were like the others, weak easily. Conquered, the others probably were. Weak, Chen agreed, or maybe they just didn't have time to prepare. We had 150 years we used every single day. She stood and walked to the window, outside. Human ships patrolled among the wreckage of the Vraxian fleet. Your empire has conquered 47 species, you've crushed civilizations and enslaved populations. You thought your military power made you invincible, but you made a fundamental mistake. What mistake? Chardok asked. Chen turned back to him. You underestimated what a species will do. When survival is at stake, your empire fights for conquest and glory. We fight to exist. There's no limit to what we'll do, no weapon we won't build, no price we won't pay to ensure our species survives. You can't beat that with superior numbers. She walked back to the table and picked up her data pad. I'm going to tell you something, Commander. Something important. We didn't use our best weapons against you. We didn't deploy our planet killer missiles. We didn't use the biological weapons we developed. We didn't activate the dimensional weapons that could have collapsed your entire fleet into a singularity. We used conventional weapons because we wanted you to survive. Chardok felt his blood run cold. Why? Because we need you to take message back. Chen said, you're going to tell your empire what happened here. You're going to tell every species in the galaxy. Humanity offered peace. You chose war. We chose survival, and we will choose survival every single time. She gestured to the guards. You and the survivors from 127 ships will be given medical care. Your vessels will be repaired enough to make the journey home. You'll be provided with supplies and safe passage out of our system. Take your people home, Commander. Tell them what you saw. Tell them what happens when you threaten humanity. Jarduk was led back to the shuttle. As they flew through the debris field, he looked at the wreckage of his fleet. 10,000 ships reduced to scrap metal, thousands of Vraxian warriors dead, the mightiest invasion force his empire had ever assembled, destroyed in less than 2 days, and the humans had held back their worst weapons. They had shown mercy by allowing survivors. This wasn't just a military defeat, it was a message written in the blood of his people. Message the entire galaxy would understand. Don't threaten humanity. They won't conquer you. They won't negotiate with you. They'll simply ensure you can never threaten them again. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session 3 days after the battle. Representatives from 200 species gathered in the Grand Chamber, a massive structure that orbited a neutral star system. The chamber was designed to hold thousands, with each species having their own section suited to their environmental needs. Today the chamber was silent. Every representative watched as the holographic display at the center showed the complete recording of the battle. They watched the Vraxian fleet arrive with overwhelming force. They watched Captain Vasquez deliver her warning. They watched Jardok dismiss it. Then they watched humanity tear apart 10,000 warships with cold efficiency. When the recording ended, the silence continued for several minutes. Finally, Counselor Varric of the Harmony Collective spoke. We warned them. We told the Vraxians not to approach human space. They didn't listen. The humans were ruthless. Another counselor said this one was from the gentle rain species, known for their pacifist philosophy. They destroyed ships that were trying to surrender. They destroyed ships that were trying to flee. Varric corrected. There's a difference. The humans gave 72 hours warning. They gave every opportunity to leave. The Vraxians chose to attack. What happened after that was war. Are the humans a threat to the rest of us? Someone asked. The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. An older counselor stood. He was from the ancient observers, a species that had been traveling the stars for 10,000 years. I've reviewed humanity's history extensively since this incident. They are not conquerors. Every war in their past was defensive or driven by resource scarcity on their home world. Now that they have access to space resources, they have no reason to attack. Others, they simply want to be left alone, but their weapons. Another representative protested. They have the capability to destroy entire fleets, entire planets. If the reports about their unused weapons are true, that makes them dangerous. That makes them safe. The ancient observer corrected. Species with that level of power that chooses not to use it for conquest is the safest neighbor you can have, as long as you don't threaten them. After hours of debate, the council reached a consensus. They would establish a demilitarized zone around human space, not to contain the humans, but to protect other species from accidentally provoking them. Any ship entering the zone would be required to transmit peaceful intent and submit to scanning. Trade and diplomacy would be encouraged, but military vessels would be forbidden. The motion passed unanimously. For the first time in galactic history, the Council created a buffer zone to protect other species from encountering a civilization, not because that civilization was aggressive, but because they had proven they would absolutely destroy anyone who threatened them. Far across the galaxy, the remnants of the Vraxian fleet limped home. Jarduk sat in the command chair of his damaged flagship, watching the stars pass by. The journey took weeks. Every day he reviewed the recordings of the battle. Every day he saw his mistakes more clearly. When they finally reached Vraxian space, an escort fleet met them. The pristine warships surrounded the damaged vessels, and Jardo could feel the shame radiating from his crew. They had left as conquerors. They returned as the survivors of a massacre. The Vraxian Emperor summoned Jardo immediately. The throne room was filled with military commanders and government officials. They all stared as Jardok entered, his uniform torn and stained, his scales dull with exhaustion. Explain. The Emperor commanded. Jardok transmitted the recordings. The entire court watched in silence as the invasion fleet was systematically destroyed. When it ended, the Emperor sat back in his throne, his 4 eyes narrowed in thought. How is this possible? A general demanded. They're a young species, 200 years in space. How did they defeat our finest fleet? Because they spent 150 of those years preparing for war, Jardok said quietly. Not to conquer, not to expand, just to survive. Every resource, every mind, every innovation, all dedicated to ensuring they could never be destroyed. He looked around the room. We thought we were invincible. They proved we were fools. The Emperor was silent for a long Time finally he spoke. We will sue for peace, send a delegation to human space. Offer reparations for our aggression. Make it clear we pose no further threat. Your Majesty, a commander protested. This is humiliating. We are the Vraxian Empire. We don't bow to primitives. Those primitives destroyed 10,000 ships. In 2 days, the Emperor said coldly, and, according to their admiral, they held back their most powerful weapons. If we continue this conflict, they won't show mercy again. They'll eliminate our entire species. He stood. Pride is worthless if we're extinct. Send the delegation. Make peace with humanity. That's an order. On Earth, Admiral Chen stood in her office overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Her aide entered with a data pad. Admiral, we're receiving peace offerings from 7 different species. The Vraxians are sending a delegation. 3 other civilizations are requesting trade agreements. The Galactic Council wants to establish diplomatic relations. Chen nodded slowly. Accept the peace offerings. Agree to the diplomatic meetings, but make it clear we're willing to trade, willing to talk, but our defenses remain active. Every weapon we use stays in place. Every defense network stays online. Some of the Council species are asking if we'll reduce our military presence. The aide said they're concerned about us. Let them be concerned, Chen said. Fear keeps people honest. As long as they leave us alone, they have nothing to fear. But if anyone else decides to test us, she left the sentence unfinished. The aide nodded and left. Chen turned back to the window, watching the waves crash against the shore. In orbit above, thousands of defense platforms maintained their silent watch. On the moon, in the asteroid belt, on Mars, throughout the entire solar system, humanity's weapons remained ready. 3 months later, Captain Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Olive Branch once again. This time they were in orbit around a new human colony world called New Hope. It was a beautiful planet, Earth-like, with vast oceans and continents covered in alien vegetation. A young Innan approached her. Captain, we're picking up a sensor contact. It's transmitting identification codes. Freyan merchant vessel requesting permission to dock at the orbital station. Vasquez smiled slightly. Grant permission. Scan them thoroughly, but if they're clean, let them dock. We're at peace now. Do you think it will last? The ensign asked. The peace, I mean. Vasquez looked out at the stars. Out there, civilizations were watching humanity carefully, some with curiosity, some with fear, some with respect. All of them had learned the same lesson. Humans were not conquerors, but they were absolutely not victims either. Maybe, she said finally, maybe not. There are thousands of species out there. Eventually, someone else might decide to test us, someone who didn't see what happened to the Vraxians, someone who thinks they can succeed where others failed. She pulled up a holographic display showing the memorial for the research station destroyed 150 years ago. 300 names, men, women, children, the people whose deaths had transformed humanity from peaceful explorers into the most defended species in the galaxy. But if they do, Vasquez continued, they'll learn the same lesson. We don't want war, we don't want conflict, we just want to be left alone. She closed the display. And if they won't leave us alone, we'll make sure they never threaten anyone again. The ensign looked uncertain. That sounds harsh, Captain. It's realistic, Vasquez corrected. The universe is dangerous. The strong prey on the weak. We decided we wouldn't be weak. We built weapons that could destroy civilizations. We created defenses that could stop any invasion. We did all of this not because we wanted to, but because we had to. She walked to her command chair and sat down. On the view screen, the Vraxian merchant ship was approaching the station. A former enemy, now a trading partner. Peace had come, but only after humanity had proven they could destroy anyone who threatened them. Log entry, Vasquez said to the ship's computer. Date November 11th, 2185. We continue to maintain defensive readiness while pursuing peaceful relations with other species. The battle 3 months ago has changed galactic politics. Humanity is now respected, feared, and left alone, which is exactly what we wanted. She paused, then added one more line. We offered peace. They chose war. We chose survival, and we will choose survival every single time. End log. Throughout human space, from Earth to the furthest colony, the same motto appeared on every ship, every station, every memorial. It was carved in stone, etched in metal, displayed in lights, a reminder of what had happened and a warning of what would happen again if necessary. We will never be victims again. Humanity had spoken. The galaxy had listened, and peace born from the ashes of 10,000 warships settled over human space like a shield, a peace enforced not by treaties or diplomacy, but by the absolute certainty that threatening humanity meant destruction. The humans continued to explore. They continued to trade. They continued to build and grow and reach for the stars. But every ship carried weapons. Every colony had defenses. Every human remembered the research station and the lesson learned in blood and fire. Leave us alone and we'll be your friends. Threaten us and we'll be your nightmare. It was a simple message, one the galaxy understood perfectly.